Thy way, O God, is in the sanctuary.
Unleash the image. The Project 2025 is here. Church and State. In the Oval Office. The image of the beast will be formed before probation closes, for it is to be the great test for the people of God, by which their eternal destiny will be decided. This documentary is for mature Christian. Rated strong meat. Seventh-day Adventists, The Two Questions and Trump.
November 5th is going to be called something else. You know what it's going to be called? Christian Visibility Day, when Christians turn out in numbers that nobody has ever seen before. Let's call it Christian Visibility Day, all right?
Seventh-day Adventists and the National Sunday Law.
This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have. This is a magnificent victory for the American people that will allow us to make America great again. Together we're going to unlock America's glorious destiny, and we're going to achieve the most incredible future for our people. I will govern by a simple motto: promises made, promises kept. We're going to keep our promises. Nothing will stop me from keeping my word to you, the people. We will make America safe, strong, prosperous, powerful, and free again. And I'm asking every citizen all across our land to join me in this noble and righteous endeavor. That's what it is. We're going to make our country better than it ever has been. And I said that many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness. And now we are going to fulfill that mission together. We're going to fulfill that mission.
The United States is a land that has been under the special shield of the Omnipotent One. God has done great things for this country, but in the transgression of his law, men have been doing a work originated by the man of sin. Satan is working out his designs to involve the human family in disloyalty.
Religion and Christianity are the biggest things missing from this country, and I truly believe that we need to bring them back, and we have to bring them back fast. I think it's one of the biggest problems we have. That's why our country is going haywire. We've lost religion in our country. All Americans need a Bible in their home, and I have many. It's my favorite book. It's a lot of people's favorite book. This Bible is a reminder that the biggest thing we have to bring back America and to make America great again is our religion. Religion is so important. It's so missing, but it's going to come back, and it's going to come back strong, just like our country is going to come back strong.
When you win, as things come forth, what happens for you in the second term for faith office? What's your administration look like?
So, first of all, we're going to set that up, and we'll be talking to you and all of the people that we just met and anybody else that you think is appropriate. We'll have, but it's important, and it'll be directly into the Oval Office and me, so we'll do that. Now, we have to save religion in this country. I mean, honestly, religion is under threat in this country, serious threat, and we can't let that happen, because I really believe it's sort of the fabric of our country. It's the thing that holds our country together. And we can't lose it. And we're not going to lose it. We're not going to lose it.
If you just heard what the President said, that faith office will be in the Oval Office in the White House and directly reported to him, because that to him is one of the most important things to people, is that we remain very strong in all of our faiths. And we are so grateful for that, for you being a protector and a fighter for religion and faith and our freedom to protect.
Donald Trump has long cultivated his support among Christian conservatives. He got about 80% of the white evangelical Christian vote in 2016 and 2020 and appears to be on track for a similar result this year. But it took on a new tone after the assassination attempt in July.
I was knocked to the ground, essentially, by what seemed like a supernatural hand And I would like to think that God saved me for a purpose, and that's to make our country greater than ever before.
How did evangelicals come to hold such strong views about the candidates? Christian Cobes-Dumais is a history professor at Calvin University in Michigan. Her work focuses on the intersection of gender, religion, and politics. Christian, let's start out by talking about the view that Christian evangelicals hold of Donald Trump and the terms they use to describe him, and whether the assassination attempt had any effect on that.
It's very popular in evangelical spaces to hear language of God's anointed, God's chosen one when Donald Trump comes up. And this is very convenient language because, of course, on the surface, Donald Trump does not appear to be a Christian. He does not appear to exemplify Christian virtue. But the idea that God has selected him nevertheless, has selected him perhaps even because he doesn't exemplify traditional Christian virtue, to do something special in this particularly perilous moment. And so they love using language like Donald Trump is a King Cyrus, selected by God in order to protect God's special people and restore Christianity.
The image of the beast will be formed before probation closes, for it is to be the great test for the people of God, by which their eternal destiny will be decided.
But we couldn't be more thrilled to be joined, of course, by the 45th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
My opponent feels like she does not have to be here, which is deeply disrespectful to the event, and in particular to our great Catholic community. Very disrespectful. Always it's a rule. You got to go to the dinner. You got to do it. Otherwise, bad things are going to happen to you from up there. Otherwise, bad things are going to happen to you from up there. Otherwise, bad things are going to happen to you from up there.
What might make the difference for Donald Trump in Michigan? White Catholics. Really interesting. He is at 61% of the vote with white Catholics. Harris is at 37%. Trump won white Catholics by 13 points in 2020. He has run that up to 24-point margin.
Wow.
That's a big difference in Michigan.
Major difference.
That is a big difference.
And you wonder whether she should have gone to that dinner.
To the Al Smith dinner. She may be wondering that tonight. He showed up and gave his speech, and he has had a lot of support, mostly based on the pro-life issue. And
RFK Jr. was cutting ads for the Catholic vote in particular in battleground states.
Before being elected for a second term, Donald Trump said that he would be a dictator on day one. And when given the chance to calm voters' fears on that subject, he doubled down.
We love this guy. He says, "You're not going to be a dictator, are you?" I said, no, other than day one. We're closing the border, and we're drilling. After that, I'm not a dictator, okay?
The president has pledged to take care of unfinished business from his first term, completing the wall along the US-Mexico border, reinstating travel bans on some Muslim-majority countries, and he's threatened to cut funding to Ukraine and to withdraw the US from NATO. But he's also made a series of new promises, such as ending birthright citizenship in the United States, cancelling the visas of foreign students who've participated in what he's called anti-Israel protests, and withholding funding from schools with vaccine mandates. He's also pledged to revive a program used by President Eisenhower in the 1950s known by the ethnic slur Operation Wetback, when 1 million Mexican immigrants were rounded up and deported. Using it as a model, Trump has promised to carry out the largest mass deportation of immigrants in US history.
They're ruining our country, and it's true. They're destroying the blood of our country. That's what they're doing.
Church members and priests and rulers will combine to organize secret societies to work in their land to whip, imprison, and destroy the lives of the colored race. History will be repeated. Let efforts be made in as silent a manner as possible, but this people need not be told that the observance of Sunday is the mark of the beast until this time shall come.
Some of his second-term plans are detailed in a document called Project 2025, a 900-page manifesto written by the conservative think tank the Heritage Foundation. Among other things, it calls for firing tens of thousands of civil servants, expanding the power of the president, enabling Trump to use the Justice Department to target his enemies, It also calls for dismantling the Department of Education, criminalising pornography, and banning the sale of the abortion pill, which is used in more than half of abortions nationwide. Trump has gone out of his way to distance himself from Project 2025, claiming on social media he knew nothing about it or the people behind it. But 140 former Trump administration officials were involved in drafting the wide sweeping plan, and here he is in 2022 speaking to the Heritage Foundation.
Heritage does such an incredible job, and they're going to lay the groundwork and detailed plans for exactly what our movement will do and what your movement will do when the American people give us a colossal mandate to save America. And that's coming. That's coming.
Trump later said that parts of Project 2025 went too far, and at the Republican convention, the party adopted a toned-down platform on abortion, reflecting Trump's belief that the issue should be left up to the states.
Then I have an Article 2 where I have the right to do whatever I want as president, but I don't even talk about that.
It's a thing called Article 2. Nobody ever mentions Article 2.
More importantly, Article 2 allows me to do whatever I want. Article 2 would have allowed me to fire him.
So it sounds
but
like
I wasn't going to fire. You know why? Because I watched Richard Nixon go around firing everybody, and that didn't work out too well. So very simply, Article 2 would allow me to do.
I could have done anything I wanted. I don't even bring it up because we don't even get there. Absolutely, I have Article 2. It gives me all of these rights at a level that nobody has ever seen before. We don't even talk about Article 2. So, they ruled no collusion, no obstruction. Very simple.
The form Satan assumed in Eden when leading our first parents to transgress was of a character to bewilder and confuse the mind. He will work in just as subtle a manner as we near the end of Earth's history. All his deceiving power will be brought to bear upon human subjects to complete the work of deluding the human family. So deceptive will be his working that people will do as they did in the days of Christ, and when asked, "Whom shall I release unto you, Christ or Barabbas?" the almost universal cry will be, "Barabbas, Barabbas." And when the question is asked, "What will ye then that I shall do unto him whom ye call the King of the Jews?" the cry again will be, "Crucify him."
Nor consider that it is expedient for us, that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation perish not. John 11 verse 50.
First, what is Project 2025? Project 2025 is a far-right conservative program led by the Heritage Foundation that outlines policy proposals and personnel recommendations meant to totally reshape the U.S. federal government if a Republican candidate wins the 2024 presidential election. So this 922-page book called The Mandate for Leadership, The Conservative Promise, has a chapter outlining proposed policy changes for the Department of Labor and related agencies. This chapter opens with a mission statement opining on the Judeo-Christian tradition stretching back to Genesis. Then you keep reading, and you get to a part calling for fair labor laws to be changed to compel Americans to observe a Sabbath rest. It states, God ordained the Sabbath as a day of rest, and until very recently, the Judeo-Christian tradition sought to honor that mandate by moral and legal regulation of work on that day. Moreover, a shared day off makes it possible for families and communities to enjoy time off together, rather than as atomized individuals, and provides a healthier cadence of life for everyone. The solution, according to the Project 2025 architects, is for Congress to amend the Fair Labor Standards Act to require employers to pay time and a half to employees who work on the Sabbath. You may recall that Shabbat is referenced a few times in the Bible, but most thoroughly in Exodus 20, verses 8 to 11. That's where God, giving his fourth commandment, tells the covenant Jewish community to rest and refrain from their usual work on the seventh day. To the average Lord's Day observing Christian, this might sound nice. No more wrestling with an employer about getting Sunday off to go to church. And according to Project 2025, the whole point of a national Sabbath rest is to bolster jobs that don't require work on the Sabbath. and simultaneously broaden options for those who do not want to work on the Sabbath. It makes so much sense, right? But when is the Sabbath, and which workers would this apply to? According to Project 2025, the Sabbath by default is Sunday, so the law would preference Christians. That's problematic. First off, the Project 2025 proposal is very Christian-centered. Why would that be a problem? Perhaps that little thing in the First Amendment of the Constitution called freedom of religion. Although this Project 2025 Sabbath policy makes accommodations for Jewish Americans, it's attempting to establish a Christian practice as the law of the land, whether you happen to be Christian or not. Doesn't that violate the U.S. Constitution? Second, the official God-given day of rest originates on a Saturday historically. So what about Christians who don't observe Sunday as Sabbath, as the biblical Sabbath? Are they a separate class of Christians? And what about non-religious folks and Americans of other faiths? Could they be targeted for harassment? Sure, it looks nice on one hand. Project 2025 is promoting a national day of self-care. But this proposal for a federal law is rooted in one particular religious vision. Why should the government be involved in controlling otherwise personal religious observances? Believe it or not, America is not a Christian nation.
Communal day of rest has eroded under pressure of consumerism. Does this sound familiar? Does this sound familiar? After we see that those people who worship the beast and are not keeping God's commandments, what do we see? Do you guys know that God is looking for men? Do we see all these things happening now? Do we see the beginning of Sunday law? Hopefully, by God's grace, we have more time. If this thing does happen 2025, that's it. It's over. Unfortunately, that communal day of rest has eroded under the pressures of consumerism and secularism, especially for low-income workers. Anyways, it says, unfortunately, that communal day of rest has eroded under pressure of consumerism. Does this sound familiar? Does this sound familiar? Someone who's a very big religious leader wrote about that. Consumerism and secularism, especially for low-income workers, the poor. Sounds familiar. Congress should encourage communal rest by amending the Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA. What is communal? What does that mean? Communal. Communal. Shared by all members of a community for common use. Okay? Communal. It's a common. Okay? Congress should encourage communal, common rest by amending the Fair Labor Standards Act to require that workers be paid time and a half for hours worked on the Sabbath. Now watch this. That day would default to Sunday. That day would default to Sunday. So that's the default, right? Sunday is the common day. That's the default, except for employers with a sincere religious observance of a Sabbath at a different time, Friday sunset to Saturday sunset, or sundown to Saturday sundown. Okay, so they're making a distinction. The common day is Sunday, that's the default. But the other, there's other people out there that their Sabbath rest, actually this is God's Sabbath rest, their Sabbath rest is Friday sundown to Saturday sundown. Okay, so they're making a distinction between the two. Sunday is the common one, the default. But then there's other ones who keep the Sabbath, the actual Sabbath holy. Those who keep Sunday, they should be getting paid time and a half.
And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword, and did live. Revelation 13 verses 13 to 14.
Babylonian monarch Nebuchadnezzar had jurisdiction over the political and religious rights of his subjects. In Daniel 3, we find the king setting a decree that his subjects had to bow down before a golden image he had constructed. Death was the punishment for noncompliance. Even after he recognized the true God of the 3 Hebrew boys, he still didn't understand liberty of conscience. He forced the worship of the true God to his subjects. Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who hath sent his angel, and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word, and yielded their bodies, that they might not serve nor worship any god, except their own God. Therefore I make a decree, that every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after the sort. Daniel 3 verses 28 to 29.
A Protestant minister, Thomas Tillam, identified the whore's mark in 1657 before Seventh-day Adventist. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until the time and times and the dividing of time. Daniel 7 verse 25. But further, how dreadful is it to the Father that change of the Sabbath upon the precious Son of God, which is the detestable design of the little horn. The changer of times. And laws what? Charge that upon Christ, which is the proper presumption of Antichrist. Is not this the whore's mark, to change the saints' times? The saints' Sabbath time, and the saints per time. Doctrine Sabbath, Thomas Tillam, the Seventh-day Sabbath, sought out in 1657, page 124.
Of course, the Catholic Church claims that the change was her act, and the act is a mark of her ecclesiastical power and authority in religious matters. Letter from C.F. Thomas, Chancellor of Cardinal Gibbons on October 28, 1895. But you may read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, and you will not find a single line authorizing the sanctification of Sunday. The Scriptures enforce the religious observance of Saturday, a day which we never sanctify. Cardinal James Gibbons, The Faith of Our Fathers, Ayres Publishing, 1978.
We're at the Al Smith dinner, of course. Tell me, why did you decide it was important to be here, and what message is Kamala Harris sending by not being here to Catholic voters?
Well, I think you're honoring the Catholic Church, and, I've been a long-time supporter, and I'm surprised she's not here. I think she's the first one in decades, actually, to miss it as a candidate. It was always been a tradition. So I'm happy only that the Catholics are going to vote for Trump now. But no, look, I have a special relationship with the Catholic Church, and I think it was very important to be here.
Yeah, I've been noticing on your social media posts at your rallies, you're playing the Ave Maria. You're posting Happy Birthday, Mary, a St. Michael prayer to ward off evil. Is that telling voters something about your spiritual journey? What is that?
No, I don't think so. It's just beautiful to me. I mean, I look at the whole thing, the words and the pictures. The pictures are so beautiful. And I put up some stuff. Somebody else asked me that same question. Yeah. And it's really that I think it's really very beautiful.
The Pope was asked about your candidacy and Kamala Harris, and he instructed Catholic voters to vote for the lesser of two evils. Who do you think he means and why?
Well, I think he wants them to vote for me, and I stand for really everything that you stand for and that the church stands for, and she doesn't. She's a very different kind of a person. She's a Marxist. Her father was a Marxist and still is a Marxist, and they are not big into religion, I will tell you, and I'm not just talking about the Catholic religion. I'm talking about any religion.
Pope Francis is now a certified Marxist, or at the very least, he is very in support of unions and worker power. Pope Francis praised unions this week, saying, quote, "There is no union without workers, and there are no free workers without a union." He said unions are called to be a voice for the voiceless, and you have to make noise to give a voice to those who have no voice.
One key source for the Pope's work was Wilhelm Emanuel von Ketteler, a German bishop. Ketteler's book was entitled Christianity and the Labor Question.
So if we follow the thread of biblical impact on the Industrial Revolution,
we start with a basic biblical idea. That was applied to a concept of workers' rights by a German bishop, whose work inspired an Italian pope to adopt his ideas and endorse Catholic involvement in labor unions.
In today's edition of Inside Project 2025, we're going to focus on Chapter 18, the Department of Labor and its related agencies. But the first thing I want to show you is a lesson in rhetoric, not in policy. So I want to go to page 605, in which it says the policy, it's noteworthy because they want to allow states and local governments to block their employees' right to organize a union. But the interesting thing here is how they word it, because they don't just say it outright. Quote, Congress should pass legislation allowing waivers from federal labor laws like the NLRA and FLSA under certain conditions, end quote. Sounds pretty benign, like the NLRA and the FLSA. Why doesn't the book spell out the laws? Because this thing is decidedly not an exercise in brevity. It's 922 pages. The reason they don't spell it out is because the NLRA, or the National Labor Relations Act of 1935, guarantees a worker's right to unionize their workplace. The FLSA is the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938, which guarantees overtime pay. Project 2025 wants states to be able to ignore these basic and long-held guarantees. Forget about undoing Roe or even the civil rights movement before that. The architects of this document want to take us back even further. They basically want to undo the New Deal, but they don't want you to be able to tell that that's what they're doing, so they're hiding the ball in the hope that you won't read it at all. But even if you do read it, like my team has, you won't realize that Project 2025 wants to eliminate basic workers' rights that lifted America out of child labor and the sweatshop era.
The trades unions will be one of the agencies that will bring upon this earth a time of trouble such as has not been since the world began.
For being here tonight.
Thank you.
Clearly, it's no secret that our country is in chaos. The world is in chaos. What happened with Yemen and the missile strikes the last few days, Ukraine, Palestine. We don't even know where the Secretary of Defense is right now. Are we on the brink of World War III?
I think we're the closest that we've ever been. And, you know, Joe, this won't be a regular war. This is not going to be, as I say, army tanks running back and forth, shooting each other. These are weapons of mass destruction, the likes of which nobody's ever seen. I've seen them. And this is obliteration. This is not a world war like we are used to.
Armageddon is a literal battle, and deadly instruments of warfare will be invented. For mighty angels hold back the powers of this earth till the servants of God are sealed in their foreheads. The nations of the world are eager for conflict, but they are held in check by the angels. When this restraining power is removed, there will come a time of trouble and anguish. Deadly instruments of warfare will be invented. Vessels with their living cargo will be entombed in the great deep. All who have not the spirit of truth will unite under the leadership of satanic agencies, but they are to be kept under control till the time shall come for the great battle of Armageddon.
Of every small town in Georgia, we are very thankful for your support of rural Georgia and rural America. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much.
However, I think one of the most pressing things on a global scale is your support for Israel. So how do you plan to support and protect Israel and the Jewish community now when you become the next president?
Thank you very much. Good question. And it's so interesting, but evangelicals and so many people support Israel, so much more. It's not just a Jewish people. It's so many Christians are so supportive of Israel. And, you know, they say, and I would agree with this 100%, nobody's done what I've done for Israel. We, as you know, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. We even built the embassy by moving the embassy. That became somewhat automatic. Golan Heights gave them jurisdiction, and we gave Golan Heights, which was a big thing. We did the Abraham Accords, which was a very, very big thing. They were trying to get it for 72 years or something, and I got it for them. We've done a lot, and the single biggest thing I did was, you want to know, is get out of the Iran nuclear deal. The Iran nuclear deal was a disaster, going to take care of Israel, and they know that. Bibi called me yesterday, called me the day before. We have a very good relationship, and I have to say fortunately they didn't listen to Biden, because if they listened to Biden, they'd right now be waiting for a bomb to drop on them, and they did their own work. They did not listen. They couldn't listen because what he was asking. In fact, just the other day, they said to him, are you okay with what they're doing? Well, I don't want them to attack the nuclear, and I don't want them to attack the oil. I said, really? That's sort of the opposite. If you go and take the exact opposite for 40 years of Biden's foreign policy, you would be one of the greatest. Just take the opposite, you'd be one of the greatest in the history of foreign policy. So we're gonna work with them very closely. We're gonna work with all nations. We're not gonna have World War III. We're closer to World War III right now than we have been ever, maybe ever. And that will be a war like no other, because the power of the weaponry, nuclear weapons, the power it's indescribable, and you don't even want to think about it. And it's mentioned all the time. You know, I never mentioned nuclear. We rebuilt our military. We rebuilt the military. We had to these people gave a lot of military to Afghanistan, if you can believe it. They have parades to show it. And those are very embarrassing moments for our country. But we're going to take good care of, frankly, we're going to take care of everything. We're going to straighten out the world a little bit. One thing, if I could, somebody that a lot of people respect a lot, Viktor Orban from Hungary. So he's the prime minister, and he made the statement. He said, when Trump comes back as president, everything's going to be perfect. And it was for 4 years. And I know exactly what he was talking about. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Seventh-day Adventists and the Eastern question.
Save Israel, right? Save Israel. And when I'm back in the Oval Office, I will support Israel's right to win its war on terror. They have to have a right to win the war. Thank you. And I will give Israel the support that it needs to win, but I do want them to win fast. Wouldn't it be nice if they could win fast? And we have to let them win fast. To our enemies around the world, we want our hostages back, and they better be back before I assume office. If Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are elected, the radical left flag burners and Hamas sympathizers will not just be causing chaos on our streets, they'll be running U.S. foreign policy in the White House, and Israel will be gone. It will be gone. I never thought I'd say that a year ago, even 2 years ago. I never thought I'd say it. But Israel will be gone, I believe. And remember, everything Trump said was right. Do you ever see the sign? Everything I said was right. I actually think that's true.
False Messiah. Many false messiahs will appear, claiming to work miracles and declaring that the time of the deliverance of the Jewish nation has come. These will mislead many. Christ's words were fulfilled. Between his death and the siege of Jerusalem, many false messiahs appeared. But this warning was given also to those who live in this age of the world. The same deceptions practiced prior to the destruction of Jerusalem have been practiced through the ages and will be practiced again.
Hey, Craig, Prime Minister Netanyahu thrilled with this result, and far-right members of his government really made no secret that they were hoping Trump would win. Now that he has, they think it will lead to a more hawkish U.S. position on Iran and potentially less American pressure on Israel over the Palestinians. But they are also acutely aware that Trump has promised to end the war in the Middle East. And one Israeli official told me today they think it's possible Netanyahu will try to sign a ceasefire deal early in the new president's next term, trying to hand Trump a quick diplomatic victory. The Israeli government also concerns that the Biden administration, in its final days in office, could potentially step up pressure on Israel over Gaza. The White House has given Israel until next week to allow more aid into the Strip or face a potential cutoff in military support. The White House, the State Department, is saying so far that Israel is failing to meet that deadline. And Israel's enemies, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, also very closely following this result. Iran has said it is planning to strike back against Israel, potentially in the coming days. But that decision may be more complicated now that they know Trump is heading back to the White House. And just finally, the political scene here in Israel, very tense right now. Last night, while all eyes were on the voting in the U.S., Netanyahu fired his defense minister, a man he has clashed with publicly, who has called for a ceasefire in Gaza. That led to major protests on the streets of Tel Aviv, demonstrators calling for a deal to finally bring those hostages home. So the Middle East very much in flux right now as the main players try to figure out what this historic American election means for them. Craig.
Erdogan. And Iran, Iran's still going through their issues. Israel's still doing what they're doing. Erdogan comes out and says Israel will be stopped sooner or later. Okay, Adam, I'm going to come to you for this one because Tom's message is very heavy, but I'm going to come to you first. So, Turkish President Erdogan condemned Israel's actions on Lebanon, stating whatever it does, Israel will be stopped sooner or later. He urged international organizations, particularly the UN, to act immediately, saying all state and international organizations, especially the UN, must stop Israel without wasting any more time. Erdogan warned that Israel's terror and genocide in Gaza had now reached Lebanon and expressed concerns that Israel could eventually target Turkey. He directly compared Israel Prime Minister to Hitler, declaring just as Hitler was stopped, Netanyahu will be stopped in the same way. Turkey Foreign Minister announced contingency plan to evacuate its 14,000 citizens from Lebanon due to the worsening security situation. Adam.
From Iran to Turkey and other parts of West Asia. Now, Turkey is one of Israel's strongest critics in the region. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is saying that after Gaza and Lebanon, Turkey is next and Israel is planning to attack in Turkey. Now, the Turkish parliament has been carrying on closed-door sessions about the war in West Asia. Listen in.
One of the strongest critics of Israeli operations in Gaza, Turkey's President worked against Israel at his party's first meeting of the new legislative year. Tayyip Erdogan said Tel Aviv's purpose of pursuing a delusioned promised land will only face disappointment and defeat. He doubled down, saying after Gaza and Lebanon, Israel will target Turkey.
The Israeli administration, which is acting with the delirium of promised lands, will set its sight on the soil of our homeland with a complete religious fanaticism after Palestine and Lebanon. I am saying this clearly. Right now, this is what the whole plan is about.
Let's go to Turkey. Turkey is upping its defense game. It's releasing its first Turkish-made fighter jet, Kaan. It is now launching in the global market. Now, Recep Tayyip Erdogan says that although Israel has its Iron Dome, Turkey will soon have its own Steel Dome air defense system.
NATO member Turkey is aiming to reduce its dependence on external suppliers of defense equipment. Ankara has steadily become one of the leading manufacturers of armed drones for the global market. It produces much of its own defense needs at home. In the latest, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan inaugurated the homemade Gökbi helicopter at the headquarters of the Turkish aerospace industries. Erdogan likened the Steel Dome to Israel's famed Iron Dome.
To counter threats from our adversaries and eliminate asymmetrical dangers, we must strengthen our layered air defense system, the system of systems. What do they have? They rely on the Iron Dome. If they have an Iron Dome, we will have a Steel Dome.
Turkish defense giant Baykar's TB3 drone has also entered mass production. It is expected to hit the global supply chain within the next 5 to 6 months. Poised to be a versatile addition to Turkey's growing arsenal of defense technology, Baykar Tar TB3 will have the added capability of landing on naval platforms. Turkish aerospace industries also plans to deliver Turkey's first homegrown fighter jet, Khan, within the next 5 years. Initially designed as a fifth-generation jet, Khan features stealth capabilities and twin engines generating 13,000 kilograms of thrust, each reaching speeds of up to Mach 1.8. Turkish aerospace industries is currently upgrading Khan with AI, state-of-the-art sensors, and the ability to integrate with unmanned platforms. With AI, state-of-the-art sensors, Turkish aviation's Khan is intended to replace Turkey's aging F-16 fleet, reducing the country's dependence on foreign defense imports.
When it comes to defense products, Turkey has transformed itself from client to competitor over the past 20 years. While its imports decreased significantly, it became a major arms exporter, setting a record high of $5.5 billion in 2023. So far, Turkish defense companies have produced drones, tanks, and helicopters, among other gear. But a much more ambitious project is now in sight. The country announced plans to build an indigenous missile defense system called the Steel Dome. The project will be a joint effort led by Turkish defense giant Aselsan, which aims to integrate multiple layers of domestic air defense systems, sensors, and weapons. The unified network structure will feature 4 layers as a way to provide a shield across large swaths of land to protect the Turkish airspace. It is part of a greater effort to enhance Turkey's defense against terrorism and other evolving threats in the region and beyond. The country also increasingly enjoys the export of its defense products to dozens of countries in Asia, Africa, and Europe. As a result, Turkish defense firms are shaking up rankings among the world's top 100, with the Defense News magazine featuring 5 of them on its recently published list.
Devlet Bahçeli, the leader of the Nationalist Movement Party, MHP, and a key ally of Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan, suggested on Tuesday the need for a constitutional amendment that would allow Erdogan to run for re-election in the 2028 elections. Erdogan, who has been in power for over 21 years, is currently serving his last term as president following his re-election last year, unless Parliament decides to call for early elections, as stipulated by the Constitution. Bahçeli expressed his unwavering trust in Erdogan's leadership, stating that it would be natural and right for the president to pursue re-election if Turkey can achieve political and economic stability alongside progress in combating terrorism and inflation.
Wouldn't it be a natural and right choice to have our president elected once again if terror is eradicated, and if a heavy blow is dealt to inflation, and Turkey secures political and economic stability?
In his remarks, Bahçeli indicated that a constitutional amendment should be explored to enable Erdogan to stand for the presidency again. His comments come amid ongoing discussions about the political landscape in Turkey, particularly after he recently stirred controversy by suggesting that the imprisoned leader of the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK, could address Parliament if he agrees to cease hostilities. Some political analysts interpret Bahçeli's remarks as a strategy by the AKP-MHP alliance to gain the support of the pro-Kurdish DM party, the third largest party in parliament, which could be crucial for passing any constitutional change beneficial to Erdogan's future electoral prospects. To proceed with a constitutional amendment, support from 360 lawmakers is required in the 600-seat parliament, as is necessary for calling early elections. The ruling AKP and its allies currently hold 321 seats, while the DEM party holds 57. Extending Erdogan's tenure could have significant implications not only for Turkey, but also for the broader Middle East, where Turkey's involvement in regional conflicts and alliances plays a crucial role. As Erdogan maintains his grip on power, his decisions on military engagement, foreign policy, and support for various factions in ongoing conflicts could escalate tensions, potentially exacerbating instability across the region. This situation transforms the matter into a global issue, as nations worldwide closely monitor Turkey's influence in the Middle East, particularly in relation to the ongoing wars.
At the very time specified, Turkey, through her ambassadors, accepted the protection of the Allied powers of Europe and thus placed herself under the control of Christian nations. The event exactly fulfilled the prediction. See Appendix. When it became known, multitudes were convinced of the correctness of the principles of prophetic interpretation adopted by Miller and his associates, and a wonderful impetus was given to the Advent movement. Men of learning and position united with Miller, both in preaching and in publishing his views, and from 1840 to 1844 the work rapidly extended. We can see that the Turks were under the control of Christian nations at the sixth trumpet, so we should see the end of the Turks by Christian nations in the third woe leading to the Sunday law.
Today, I have a message for the Turks. Your government is fooling you into believing that one day you will become a member of the European Union. Well, forget it. You are no Europeans, and you will never be. An Islamic state like Turkey does not belong to Europe. All the values Europe stands for, freedom, democracy, human rights, are incompatible with Islam. We do not want visa-free travel for Turks coming to Europe either. European governments that agree with this will be voted out of office by the people. Turkey voted for Erdogan, a dangerous Islamist who raises the flag of Islam. We do not want more, but less Islam. So Turkey, stay away from us. You are not welcome here.
SDA is starting to make the connection. Thus, the final movements of the Turk constitute a sign that the 7 last plagues, the time of trouble such as never was, are about to be poured out upon the unrepentant, that the coming of Christ, the deliverance of the saints, and the resurrection of the dead are about to take place. The Lord gave the early Christians a sign of the impending destruction of Jerusalem, for which they should watch in order to effect a timely escape. And when ye shall see Jerusalem encompassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Luke 21:20. Likewise, he has given the whole world a sign by which we may know that its destruction is imminent. It is the sudden and temporary removal of the Turks' government to Jerusalem. Few things would please the enemy of souls more than to have God's people confused over this important sign. This move on the part of the Turk will yet take place. The pronouncements of mighty governments and the operation of armed hosts may seem to contravene the purposes of God as outlined in prophecy. But the plans of the Lord know neither hindrance nor delay. They move on to the fulfillment as the starry hosts march on in their orbits. Happy are the people who fit their plans into the plans of God. The Present Truth, April 1st, 1920, page 14. Turkey's Coming Doom by Malcolm N. Campbell. Uriah Smith. There is a prophecy concerning what we call the Eastern Question, which points out that the Turk shall remove the seat of his government from Constantinople to Jerusalem, and then come to his end with none to help him. And this is in close connection with the standing up of Michael, or the beginning of the everlasting reign of our Lord Jesus Christ, who finally sets up his eternal kingdom for the saints of the Most High. Daniel 12:1, Daniel 11:45. Naturally, the mind of the student of prophecy would fix itself upon this point, the expulsion of the Turk from Europe, as the immediate and decisive sign of the second coming of Christ in the clouds of heaven. A correspondent from Hume, Michigan, has been studying upon this point and writes, in Luke 21:20, we read that when the disciples should see Jerusalem compassed with armies, they were to consider it a sign for immediate flight from the city. Is it not possible that this may have a secondary and particular application to the people of God in the last days, namely that the retirement of the Turk from Europe and the establishment of his government at Jerusalem will be a sign for the people of God to flee from the cities and retire by themselves into secret places, waiting for the coming of the Lord? For when the scene shifts to Jerusalem, we understand that all nations will be gathered there to the battle of the great day. Then Jerusalem would be compassed with armies, plural, whereas now, when we speak of the military power of a nation, we say army singular, as the army of Great Britain, the army of the United States, etc. When Jerusalem was overthrown, it was compassed with one army, the Roman army, not armies. But the time will come in the future when it will be compassed with armies. And will not this be the decisive sign to us of the end? Answer. The events transpiring in the East are worthy of special attention, and their significance as signs should be marked. But it should be remembered that there is a Western question which is equally significant. Events are moving here, the currents of which are eddying around our own feet, which are just as significant as striking, as signs as anything can be. Signs are multiplying on every hand. In our own country, they are manifested in political, social, and religious movements, especially the latter. Backsliding and apostasy from some of the highest and noblest principles among men are apparent in our land. The everlasting truth, incorporated in the Declaration of Independence of the United States, that governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed, is repudiated by a growing party in our own country and denounced as the old Philadelphia lie. They would have it that governments derive all their powers directly from God, said powers to be interpreted and applied by his agents, Elias themselves. Secondly, the Constitution of the United States, a document which has been described by a leading organ of public opinion in England as the most sacred political document in the world, has been repudiated. It has been denied the privilege of following the flag. The United States has shown itself willing to extend its jurisdiction over subject peoples, while at the same time it denies to them the civil and religious rights which the Constitution guarantees to all people. This is national apostasy, and this is today taking place right before our eyes. It ought to make the nerves of every intelligent man tremble with apprehension when he contemplates the inevitable results of such a course. Ancient prophecy foretold it. Modern prophecy repeats and applies it. It says, when Protestantism shall stretch her hand across the gulf to grasp the hand of the Roman power, which it is now doing, when she shall reach over the abyss to clasp hands with spiritualism, which she is now doing, when under the influence of this threefold union our country shall repudiate every principle of its constitution as a Protestant and Republican government, which she is now doing, and shall make provision for the propagation of papal falsehoods and delusions, then, which is now, we may know that the time has come for the marvelous working of Satan, and that the end is near. As the approach of the Roman armies was a sign to the disciples of the impending destruction of Jerusalem, So may this apostasy be a sign to us that the limit of God's forbearance is reached, that the measure of our nation's iniquity is full, and that the angel of mercy is about to take her flight, never to return. Testimonies for the Church, number 32, page 207, quoted in The Marvel of the Nations, page 298. The Eastern and Western question. So critical and stirring as events in the East are, here are movements in our own land which are now taking place, and which are distinctly specified as an indication by which we may know, when they do take place, that the cup of iniquity in our nation is full, that the limit of God's forbearance is reached, and mercy is about to take her flight, never to return. So while keeping our eyes open on events in the East, let us not overlook movements near our home. All things admonish us to be ready for the wave of the crest, of which is even now curling to break, and burst upon our land and upon the world, and involve all in ruin. Here is the decisive sign. Review and Herald, January 28, 1902, page 8. Uriah Smith. 2 discourses were given in the tabernacle this day. In the forenoon we spoke, not on the Eastern, but on the Western question, namely, the religio-political course this nation is to pursue according to prophecy, dwelling particularly upon the Sunday movement now becoming so prominent, and the impressions received and the indications manifested at the recent Cleveland Convention of the National Reform Association. Review and Herald, December 18, 1883. Uriah Smith, page 8.
The 7 churches of Revelation are in Asia Minor, which is present-day Turkey. When Christ is done interceding with Laodicea, which is the last of the 7 churches, Christ will throw the censer. Turkey stands as a national guidepost to the world, that men may know what is going on in the sanctuary above. In Daniel 11 verse 45, the king of the north come to his end, and none shall help him. But the papacy cannot be the king of the north who shall come to his end, before the events of Daniel 12 verse 1 of when Michael stand up, and of the time of trouble. For the papacy will still be around persecuting the people of God even when Michael stand up, and through the time of trouble, and when Christ returns it is the papacy, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 8.
There will be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time, and at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. Many shall be purified, and made white, and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand.
The last signpost. The expression, "None shall help him," clearly implies that he has previously been helped by other powers. In the war with France, 1798 to 1801, England and Russia assisted the Sultan. In the war between Turkey and Egypt, 1838 to 1840, England, Russia, Austria, and Prussia intervened in behalf of Turkey. In the Crimean War, 1853 to 1856, England, France, and Sardinia supported the Turks. In the Russo-Turkish War of 1877 to 78, the great powers of Europe interfered to arrest the progress of Russia. And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. Dan 11:45. This movement on the part of Turkey is the signal for the standing up of Michael. That is, it marks this event as next in order. The great final test. The man of sin has led the way in tampering with God's Sabbath, and the Christian world has followed and has dressed up Sunday in Christian garb and presented it to the world. God hates robbery for offerings. Never before has there been a time when there was such a need for the people of God to vindicate and magnify the law of God. When we see the law made void, what position should we occupy? Should we compromise? No, Because the world chooses to transgress the law is no reason why we should do so. The Sabbath question is to be the issue in the great final conflict in which all the world will act a part.
2 questions. The Eastern political question and the Western religious liberty question. You ask how long before the work will be done. The outlook is to my mind growing very much restricted. Outside of our own work there are now only 2 questions to be settled, the Eastern political question and the Western religious liberty question. How speedily is it possible for that image to be formed? That depends upon public opinion, and public opinion is a fickle thing. It may change in a night. Organizations of immense influence and power are besieging Congress to pass such laws and so amend the Constitution as to virtually unite church and state. Then the image would be here. And in the East, all Europe trembles today, on the verge of an all-devastating war, and it would hardly seem possible for this to come without bringing the Turk, the king of the North, to his end, with none to help him. And then, the prophet says, Christ takes his throne and comes as king.
I'm Presbyterian. Can you believe it? Nobody believes I'm Presbyterian. I'm Presbyterian. I'm Presbyterian. Boy, that's down the middle of the road, folks, in all fairness. I mean, Seventh-day Adventists, I don't know about. I just don't know. I mean, Seventh-day Adventists, I don't know about. I just don't know about.
We have much to unlearn, and much to learn again. Some of us have had time to get the truth and to advance step by step, and every step we have taken has given us strength to take the next. But now time is almost finished, and what we have been years learning, they will have to learn in a few months. They will also have much to unlearn and much to learn again. Those who would not receive the mark of the beast and his image when the decree goes forth must have decision now to say, nay, we will not regard the institution of the beast.
Unleash the image. The Project 2025 is here. Church and state. In the Oval Office. The image of the beast will be formed before probation closes, for it is to be the great test for the people of God, by which their eternal destiny will be decided.
Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, comment, like, and share. God bless.